And thanks everybody for coming out and talking to us about metrics and our ClarityCloud platform. And I'll be happy to take you through that all today. My name is Matt Mason. As we said, I am the person on the left. I'm not the robot on the right. But let's find out a little bit how you found out about this or who you are, so that we can target this presentation a little bit more. We're going to open up a poll that you can see on the GoToMeeting or go to the webinar right side, and I wanted to see if you guys could answer just if you guys are existing Clarity users or just interested in the topic of model health metrics or that kind of thing. This will just help me steer a little bit of how much depth to go into on certain topics. If you're all, existing Clarity users or something like that, then we don't need to go in quite as much depth, but we'll cover that. All right, 70% voted. That might be good enough. Ultimately, it looks like there's a section of people that are existing Clarity users. Looks like 60% or so are just not existing Clarity users and just interested in model health and metrics. Okay, so that thanks for doing that, everybody. That gives me enough to steer the demo appropriately. So moving forward, we're going to cover what is ClarityCloud and is it like the Clarity product that we've been promoting and selling and developing for 10 years. What do we mean by metrics and why are they useful? Demonstration and next steps. So I wanted to talk about what is ClarityCloud, and in order to do that, unfortunately, I think I have to talk about what is Clarity. Clarity is a product that we've been developing since 2011, and it is at its heart a Revit automation platform, something where you install the software inside of your company. It becomes sort of an intranet for Revit projects, and it has the ability to do all sorts of different tasks that you can automate, from PDF and AutoCAD exports to synchronization of files to BIM 360 upload and download, and all sorts of different things, over 60 different automation oriented things at the core. And the way that works is that, again, it's installed inside your network. So you need a server, you need to have typically some, one or more dedicated machines with Revit installed on it to sort of do that work in the background. And so that automation is really at the core of what we do with Clarity. And one of the things that we can automate while we're making PDFs and other kinds of things is we can take little snapshots of your model health. We can measure things about the Revit models or the AutoCAD files and keep track of that over time. So the on-premise Clarity is really centered on automation. It has a lot of model health sort of features, but also has these other features for things like room and equipment data sheets being automated, business intelligence, extracting out all your Revit data into a format that can be used with business intelligence tools. There's a space programming module. There's all sorts of things out there. And we've got lots and lots of customers out there that use this as part of their everyday sort of thing. But we know that the world is moving towards the cloud. And so a year or so ago, we started working on Clarity in the cloud. So something where you would not have to install the software locally, you would not have to have your own Revit licenses for it. Everything could be done in the cloud and processed via either IMAGINiT in the cloud or via Autodesk Forge in the cloud to do that kind of work. And again, our focus is still automation first and foremost, but the second area that we've developed on the cloud side of things is the Revit and AutoCAD model health oriented features. So this is our new platform. It is going to be a number of years before the cloud platform catches up with the on-premise platform that we have, but it's the seemingly inevitable future of the cloud. So this is the direction that we're headed. So ClarityCloud is the software as a service version, but like I said, it's still a relative baby at 1 year old as compared to 11 years old for Clarity. So moving on, what do we mean by metrics and why are they useful? The best metaphor I can give you is to think about it like your heart rate, your blood pressure. That's why sometimes we call these things health metrics. They're measurements that are taken over time, either on an ongoing basis, or even if you just looked at, what was your heart rate or your blood pressure since your last visit. Either one of those things is a measurement, and if you're talking to your doctor can compare where are you today and where have you been in the past, and and have some kind of way of trying to consider what does that mean if it's the same, what does it mean if it's different. So we are bringing that kind of measurements into the world of Revit and AutoCAD to a lesser degree. So let's say you are the BIM doctor, if you will. Let's say that you had data about a Revit model over the last, say, 6 months, like what we're showing here. This is your chart. We measured the model size, let's say once a day over that time frame. What do you see in here? What does this mean to you as the doctor? Is the growth of the model from 88 megs down here up to 220 up there? Does that seem normal to you? You can decide. What else can you see? Well, these ups and downs within something like the model size. The Revit model file, it rarely gets smaller unless someone is doing the periodic sort of maintenance of compact, save with compact, auditing, purging, sometimes that kind of thing. And so you can tell at a glance. I have somewhere, I've got another slide that shows one that just kind of keeps going up and up and up without any of this up and down. But if there is up and down, then chances are someone on the team is doing some amount of model maintenance as the model grows. So you can tell a lot if you're the doctor just by having this data and being able to compare how are we now versus were we in the past. So what else does this apply to? So the Clarity metrics that we offer for Revit and AutoCAD, they fall into different categories. We have a lot more available on the Revit side. It's just more time that we've been developing it for Revit. AutoCAD is a relatively recent addition for us. But they fall into these categories that we would class as sort of basic, kind of fundamental sort of things. Best practices or anti-best practices within Revit especially. Cleanup tasks. What are measurements that give you an indicator that the model's being sort of kept clean, as opposed to you've got 1,000 3D views in the model, all that are named 3D view 546. And then there's certain measurements that we take not because they're implicitly good or bad or any sort of judgment to them. They're just sort of a measurement of sizing of the project or progress, perhaps. Something that you might like to track over time, but yeah, it's not anything that there's implicit goodness or badness to the metrics. So we've got effectively the same kind of categories on the AutoCAD side. There's just less of them. And to go into a little more depth, I mean, I'm not going to list all 60 here, but to give you an idea on the Revit side, You know, the fundamentals are things like file size, which we looked at a second ago, and file open time, which is, you know, we kind of consider these things as sort of basic hygiene to stay on top of, and it's also a measurement, at least file open time. When it takes a long time to open the model, the Revit users within the company start complaining about how much time is spent opening the model. And so having a feeling of when did that change, or what was it a month ago versus now, it can be very powerful to understand and manage that process. In terms of best practices and anti-best practices, you know, that ranges from basic things like number of Revit warnings in the model, usage of things like in-place families, groups, you know, imports, that kind of thing. You know, things like whether you're pinning levels and grids, how many work sets, you know, do you have in the model? All these kinds of things that, you know, are really just measurements, but we kind of group them into, they're indicating whether people are following best practices or not. Cleanup oriented metrics, like I said, are people keeping up on, you know, cleaning up after themselves in the model, or is the model sort of bloated with temporary things that were created but haven't really been cleaned up, which does definitely impact the size of the model, and therefore the time it takes to open, the time it takes to do lots of things. And then ultimately sizing and progress things, you know, you can measure number of elements. You can use that as a comparison between projects, for example, number of sheets, placeholder sheets, the total room area. You know, there's a wide variety of things that fall into this category of just sizing in progress. And then on the Revit side, we also have a group of, I think it's 17 different metrics that Autodesk published, a number of years back as what's called Revit Performance Advisor. And this is a part of the API that's sort of obscure, but it's out there, and Autodesk has published it as 17 different reasons why your Revit model might be slow. And they've built in all the rules to measure this, and we're just providing you access to something that's buried in the Revit API to go in and be able to analyze all of this data for you. So yeah, this is an additional set of metrics that add on to our other metrics. The other metrics, you know, I would say were collected over the years by going to conferences like Built or RTC before that, and like Autodesk University. Lots of people have been presenting their thoughts on how to measure Revit model health at those conferences, and we've listened and tried to provide all of the different metrics that people have said that we're interested in. So that's the Performance Advisor. As I mentioned, on the AutoCAD side, still relatively modest. We're just sort of looking at some of the basic AutoCAD things that we can measure, and really just moving into sort of cleaning up issues or you know, things that we think are good practices or bad. That's an area of growth for us, but yeah, we've got some of the basics within AutoCAD. And Civil 3D metrics, we've got these available, but Autodesk Forge, the Civil 3D engine for Autodesk Forge is still in beta, so we have not released this into ClarityCloud as of yet. But yeah, these are coming. They're available in our on-premise product, just not available in the cloud until Civil 3D for Forge comes out of beta testing. So that's a lot of talk about things. Let's flip over and look at the product. It's our existing product it's the on-premise product, but the cloud product, you know, it's just up on the website. No hardware to install, no software to install. Just come to the website and sign up, set up your projects, and then you can analyze your projects for things like metrics. I'm going to go first into this project. Each project is just set up. The one restriction of ClarityCloud today is that ClarityCloud can only work with BIM 360 projects. So our on-premise product can do file-based and Revit server and Bentley ProjectWise and all the other places that you could potentially host your Revit files. Clarity in the Cloud today is BIM 360 only. So if I go in and look at this project, so what can we look at here? So over the course of the project, we can look at any of these metrics. You can see we've captured a bunch of different metrics over time. So for example, we could look at number of warnings over time. Okay. And I gotta hit view. There we go. Okay. So so you can see, over the life of time that we were capturing warnings, we've cleaned up, going from 550, down to 176. So over that time, some time's been spent on resolving the warnings. And over that same time, you can also see we've cleaned up the model size of the model. We often put that as a side metric, just as for comparison. But other things you can look at. Let's look at things like in-place families. So in-place families, again, we were at a big number, 208, and we made some changes, and now we're back down to a smaller number along the lines of 65 or so, which is still a lot, but you can see the difference. You can see where we were versus where we are. So all these metrics are available for each of the different models, and we can see how the different models have changed over time. So this is the sort of basics of the measurements and being able to look at the graphs. Going beyond this is where we start getting into helping you draw a line between what's good and what's not good and what's sort of worrisome. So within the metrics section, which is accessible only to people who have the role of sort of a project coordinator, we can go in and for Revit or for AutoCAD, we can start drawing some lines to say, okay, you're measuring 60 different metrics. That's great, but that's maybe a little bit too much for anybody to worry about. Let's pick the 5 or 10 or whatever there might be that we really care about as a company, and let's actually assign some ranges to say what's acceptable. So if we look at this one like Revit warnings, we've said, okay, this is something that we care about, we want to track, and there's this range of, okay, well, 0 to 150, we've decided that that's the range that says, don't even worry about it, that's perfectly okay. 1,000 or higher, that's a red flag, that's a problem. And then between this 150 to 1,000 range, that's sort of an area of concern. And so with this, we can start assessing whether models, not just the measurement, but start assigning like whether this measurement should be a cause for concern or not. So this is firm level standards, and we've also had different firms come to us and say we'd like to actually calculate a score for a model at the end of the day based on these things that we care about. So we now let you assign a certain number of points to to this problem, and how many points. It's sort of like a test in school. A failing measurement is 0. A good measurement is 20 points, and in the middle is partial credit. So we sort of have a sliding scale depending on where you are along this area of concern. But at the end of the day, we now have this set of metrics, and we can assign a score to a model based on passing or failing these particular set of metrics, whatever it is that you choose to add to your list of things. And then, the scoring, we can say, okay, so 75 is a passing grade. And so, we will sort of highlight the models that do not have a passing grade of 75. Also, we've, in doing this for the last, 6 or 8 years, probably on the Clarity on-premise side, we also recognize that there are mega projects out there, and sometimes the rules are different for mega projects. And in order to help accommodate that, we ask you for what's the range of your typical model size. So in this case, someone's put in 150 to 650 megabytes is our typical Revit model size. If it's bigger than 650, we'd call that large. And that's going to vary from firm to firm and firm type to firm type. But yeah, ultimately, this also lets you go in and say, I want to expand the range for something that's in the large model area. So this 1.5 says, we're going to boost this end up to 1500 for large models. So yeah, so a little bit of a sliding scale based on the size of model and project. So with all of these things that we have here, we can then give, and instead of just giving you, here's 60 measurements and the graphs that you can go through one by one and look at over time, we can instead, within a project, go in and say, well, tell me the summary of where things are at. So for my Revit models on this project, I've got 3 models, and you can see, that they're all not scoring particularly well, and that's dependent on how many warnings they have. So you can see we have a yellow light, green light on this one. We've got red lights on in-place families still, and purgeable families and other kind of cleanup things. These had lower points associated with them, but ultimately we still wound up scoring quite low. The gray ones are in the sort of report only. Number of sheets is not good or bad. We would say it's just a measurement of complexity. So with that, this gives you sort of a tool to look at a glance, and from here you can also dive in and say, well, show me this one, the interiors model. How did that get so bad? And you can see, back at the beginning we had very few. Somebody created something with a ton of in-place families, and then it fell back to to lower levels, but there's still 23 different in-place families in the project. So that's the kind of thing that that we're offering. This can be offered in both Revit and AutoCAD, where we have a list of models and whatever metrics that you care about, as well as a numeric score for each model to draw your attention to things that really need attention. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do with this. That in talking to people in a BIM coordination role over time, what they said is that it took a lot of time to stay on top of projects, that you had to be in the model to know what was going on in the model. And it takes a lot of time to get into the model and stay on top of it. Whereas here they can tell at a glance for the metrics that you specifically want to include in this and care about, do I have problems? Do I have areas of concern? And being able to quickly dig in there and understand, when did these things happen? So ultimately, it's this is a tool for users, but but it's also primarily a tool for BIM coordinators who might be responsible for a bunch of different Revit projects or AutoCAD projects, and can't really necessarily spend the time to be in the model to watch what's going on with it. So this runs in the background all the, or as often as you would like. And how does it do that? If I go over, I'll go over and look at this other project here. So much like our tasks that do things like make PDFs from Revit or make DWG files, you can just go in and say, I would like to add Revit model metrics, for example, to my list of tasks. I've already done that here. So there's nothing really to configure. You can go in and say, I don't need, maybe I'm an architect and I don't really need to check the, the metrics on the MEP model or the structural model in my project. I'll just check on the architecture model. But whatever you choose to do there, you can say, just do it on demand when I ask, or schedule it to happen, weekly, monthly, maybe only the days when the model changed. Just wake up at 2 a.m. only on days when the model changed. No sense on doing it Saturday, but during the week, let's wake up at 2 a.m. and let's check the model quality. So once this is all set up, we can do this. I'm going to kick this off just right here. We'll just say model metrics. That started 3 tasks off. If we look at our task queue, so it started off a task for each separate model. And I'm just going to talk for a moment, but you can see that that things are being sent off to Autodesk Forge to process in the background. And if we watch, we'll actually see things happen. But yeah, ultimately, this is all part of our task automation engine in the cloud, where data gets sent off to Forge. Forge is going to, depending on what Forge's level of busyness, it will work through their queue, and it's normally just a few seconds, and we can normally see it start going. And the time it takes is really not that much. It's obviously it has to open up the Revit model within Forge, which you can do a little bit faster than it can as a regular Revit model as a user, because they're running a special headless version of Revit in the cloud at Forge. But yeah, then the actual analysis, once you've got the model open, only takes seconds to go through and run the actual model. So, all right. Well, obviously, I picked the wrong time of day to do this if I wanted to see things happen live. Come on, guys. And I'll go through here for a second. We do track the tasks through its whole lifetime. You can come in and see the logs of what happened on a particular task that is completed. I'm going to flip over to I thought I had a previous run in here. No? Okay. Must have done that on a different project. All right, well, let's flip over and look at a project that I did run one on right beforehand. So Performance Advisor, Model Metrics. So this one was run just before the meeting, and you can just see that it only took from 11:39 to 11:41, in 14 seconds of actual runtime to analyze the 60 metrics about this particular model. So obviously, larger models probably take longer, but yeah, it's pretty fast. So yeah, we track all of this, and you can come in and see if when's the last time that a particular metric was computed or checked. All right. Okay, now I can see stuff is running. Oh, and actually, yeah, all right. So we've got some things queued up still, and then we've got delivery stuff going on as well. So, but yeah, so ultimately that's, that's what we have today in ClarityCloud on the, on the health metrics side of things, the ability to run things in the background and have it do the work, be processed by Forge. Here we go. Okay, so finally something is in progress, and we should start seeing actual activity go by here. Well, live demo. This is what I get. But yeah, ultimately, if I flip back to my PowerPoint for a minute here. So yeah, metric scoring I mentioned. So how does ClarityCloud, how does it work in terms of pricing? Right now, our pricing is set at $50 per project per month. So you're effectively signing up a project, and then it is a little bit usage based. I mean, because you could, sign it up and run it once a month, or you could sign it up and, run it every 5 minutes. And ultimately, Forge is a per CPU hour, cost for us. So so that's how it works. Is you sign up per project, and then also get a billing per usage. It's just at the end of the month you get the bill. You can set limits on what's the maximum amount you want to spend and that kind of thing. So so yeah, it's ultimately usage based billing that you can control how many active projects you have and how many CPU hours of processing you have. But as you saw in that small model sort of example, it can be as fast as 15 seconds to actually do the work. So you can get a lot of models processed for a CPU hour at at 15 or 30 seconds apiece. And if you're interested in this, I'm going to hit the questions here in a moment, but a trial is free. All it takes is just going to clarity.imaginit.com, and there's a link that says request access here, and we'll get you set up with a trial tenant of the software. You will need to have your BIM 360 account admin go in and enable ClarityCloud access for your hub. But once you've done that, you can just set up your projects and tell us where the Revit models are, add in those metrics, and go. And the trial comes with 8 free hours of usage, which you can use for model metrics. You can use it for making PDFs or AutoCAD files or any number of the other cloud-based tasks that we offer. So I'm going to tempt fate and just look back at our. Oh, okay. So while we were looking away, it did finish 2 of the tasks, but this one is still queued up. Okay, so these finished, and you can see they ran in about a minute in this one. So so yeah, so that's ClarityCloud, and yeah, do people have questions?